Hello, I am the Story Girl, and welcome to the story of Baba Yaga. There once was a man who had a little daughter and no wife, and so he married a new wife, and they got on very happily, he thought. However, the new mother, the stepmother, hated the little daughter. Hated her with such a fury that she forced the little girl to wash and cook and clean, to take care of the house all the day long, and feed her only on what was left over after the meal was eaten. But the little girl was so kind-hearted, she did it all without complaining. Well, one day, the stepmother decided that she had had enough of this little daughter's goodness and kindness and purity. She decided she would get rid of the little daughter once and for all. It just so happens that morning the father left for a long journey and wouldn't be back for a day and a half. And so the stepmother said, "Little daughter, come here." And the little daughter stepped forward. "Yes, stepmother?" And the stepmother says, "Little daughter, I'm sending you into the forest to visit my sister, your auntie, and I'm going to have you borrow some thread and a needle from her. I'm needing it to make a nice nude blouse for you." "But stepmother," said the little daughter, "we have plenty of thread here." And she pulled a spool of thread and a needle out of her own pocket. Well, the stepmother snatched those from the little daughter and threw them out the window. "Any other questions, little daughter?" "No, stepmother," said the little daughter. "Good," said the stepmother. "Here is a little handkerchief that I have packed for you with some bread and some meat and a little bit of cheese. And you must go into the deepest part of the woods, take a turn at the great large oak tree, and go on until you find my sister's little cottage. Now off with you. I want you back before midday tomorrow." Well, the little girl took the little handkerchief that was full of the bread and meat and cheese and went off through the door. She was walking along the path and was just about to enter the dark forest when she met a very kind-looking, plump old woman. "Dearie," said the old woman, "are you going into those woods?" "Yes, old mother," said the little daughter. "I'm going in there to visit my auntie, the sister of my stepmother, to ask for a bit of thread and a needle." "Oh, my darling girl," said the old woman, "don't you know there is only one creature that lives in those dark woods? Only one. Her name is Baba Yaga. They say that she is so thin and bony that just a drop of water would melt her all away. They say that instead of riding on a horse or a donkey, she rides a mortar, which is a bull, and flies about peddling her mortar with a pestle, which is a stick that you would use to grind herbs inside of that bowl. And they say that the best thing in the world she likes to eat is little girls." "Oh," said the little daughter, "are you sure there isn't another person living in those woods?" "Only one. Baba Yaga. And we do not even know if she is a woman at all. Around here, we call her a witch." "Thank you, old mother," said the little daughter, and she continued on her way. She was afraid of what Baba Yaga might do to her, but she was more afraid of what her stepmother would do if she came back without the piece of thread and the needle. So she walked and she walked and she walked till she came to the large oak tree. She walked and she walked and she walked until she came to the only little cottage for miles, the only house she had seen in the great wide woods. A cottage that, oddly enough, stood on a pair of chicken legs, and those chicken legs strutted about the yard and the house bobbed along on top of them. What a strange house, thought the little girl. She looked at the fence. The fence that was so pale and so white and so gnarled, it looked as though it may have been made out of bones. The little daughter was frightened, but she had to go on. So she opened the gate. Oh, the gate was so screechy it hurt her ears. She looked around and saw that there was a little tin of oil on the ground. "You poor little gate," said the kind little daughter, and she picked up the can of oil and poured drops of oil until it would swing forward and backward without even a sound, without a hiss, without a murmur. "There you are." And she walked into the yard and watched the house strut about on its chicken legs. She saw in the corner of the yard was a great black hound dog with yellow eyes and teeth bared. It raised its head at the girl, at the little daughter, and she said, "Oh, you poor thing!" For this dog, for all that it was large, was as thin as a bone. She said, "Oh, you poor little doggy, I don't have very much, but I do have some bread and meat." And she threw it to the dog, and the dog smelled the bread and meat and ran forward and gobbled it up. It was so happy with its meal that it didn't even lift a paw as the little daughter walked up to the house, found the steps, walked up and rapped on the door. "Who is it?" said a voice from inside of the cottage. "It is me, the little daughter, little stepdaughter to your sister." "Ah!" And out of the door stepped the longest nose the little daughter had ever seen. The nose was so long it preceded the bony figure out of the door for several minutes before the rest of the old woman appeared. So thin and gnarled and sandpapered she was indeed. "Ah, my little niece, come in, come in. I am Baba Yaga." "Pleased to meet you, Auntie," said the little daughter. "Oh, don't go away so quickly, my dear. Tell me, what brings you to Baba Yaga's little cottage in the woods?" "Well, you see, Auntie, my stepmother needs a spool of thread and a needle." "Oh, but that can be had in a moment. You and I have all day we can spend together. Here, come sit by my fire and do a bit of weaving on my loom." The little daughter was terrified at the hungry look in Baba Yaga's eyes. But what could she do but sit down at the loom and begin to weave, taking the shuttle back and forth through the enormous loom. "Yes, little niece, yes, you just keep weaving right there. Make yourself comfortable." And Baba Yaga trotted out of the room and yelled, "Girl! Girl!" while she was shouting for her servant girl. And the young maid came quickly, and Baba Yaga said, "Girl!" and boxed her ears. "Girl, go and prepare a bath for my niece, and make sure the water is hot. Make sure the water is boiling hot, for I will have this girl for my breakfast." And the maid scuttled off with a bucket for the water, go to draw the water, but the little girl stopped her and said, "Oh, please, please, don't fill the bath very hot. Please, fill it slowly. Fill it slowly. Give me some time. I don't have very much." She shook the cheese out of her little handkerchief and said, "Here, take this handkerchief. It's pretty. Please take this handkerchief and please take this handkerchief and don't make the bath too hot." Well, the servant girl took the beautiful handkerchief, tied it around her head, and said, "I won't fail you. And she started to very slowly fill the very hot bath while the little daughter wove and wove on the loom. Well, while she was weaving, Baba Yaga called in, "Little daughter, little niece, are you still weaving?" Yes, Auntie," said the little daughter. And suddenly, the little daughter heard a voice from very near say, "Psst, little daughter." She looked around, but the only person in the room was herself. And besides the black cat that was on the windowsill, there was no one else. "Psst, little daughter." It was the black cat that was speaking to her. "Yes," said she. "Is that a piece of cheese in your lap?" Little daughter had forgotten that she had shaken that piece of cheese out of the handkerchief before she gave the handkerchief to the servant girl. "Oh, why, yes. I'm too shaky to eat anything right now. Here, you can have it." And she handed the piece of cheese to the cat. The bony cat leapt lightly down from the windowsill and patted over and ate the cheese. "You are a kind girl. You gave the cheese to me, and the handkerchief to the servant, and the bread and meat to the dog, and the oil to the gate. Because you are so kind, I will help you. Do you see that cloth and that comb over there on that table?" The little daughter looked, and for truth, there was a comb and a cloth on the table. "Yes," said the little daughter. Take those two things in your pocket and leave the house. Run as fast as you can. If you don't run as fast as you can, then Baba Yaga will catch up to you with her mortar and pestle." "I don't know if I can run that fast," said the little daughter. "You can't," said the cat. "But when you are running, if you hear Baba Yaga swinging her pestle and making the mortar fly against the ground, first throw the cloth over your shoulder, but don't look, just keep running. And Baba Yaga will find a way to get after you even after that. So if you hear the clack of that pestle against the mortar flying along, throw the comb over your shoulder and run for your life." "But, thank you, Sir Cat. I appreciate the advice, but once I stop weaving with this shuttle on the loom, she'll surely know I have gone." "Not to worry about that," said the cat. "You are my friend, and I help those who are my friend." So the little daughter hopped up from the loom and snatched up the comb and the cloth and put them in her pocket and bolted out the door. She didn't know as the cat was sitting in her place and began to weave on the loom, making a perfect mess of things, weaving and clacking and clattering, so that when Baba Yaga called out, "Little niece, are you still weaving?" the cat called out, "Yes, Auntie," in a passable imitation of the little daughter's voice. The little daughter bolted and ran as fast as she could until Baba Yaga came to check on her and saw that it wasn't the little daughter sitting at the loom, but her own black cat, tangled up in the loom with the shuttle clickety-clacking away, becoming more and more tangled. "Where is the little girl?" said Baba Yaga. "Oh, she got away," said the cat. "Why didn't you scratch her eyes out?" said Baba Yaga. "That little girl gave me a piece of cheese. You haven't given me a scrap of food, even though I've served you faithfully my whole life." Baba Yaga went up to the servant girl and boxed her ears. "You girl, why didn't you stop the girl from leaving?" "Well, Baba Yaga, you've treated me poorly my whole life, and she gave me the gift of this beautiful handkerchief to wear around my head. Woof! And Baba Yaga bolted down the steps and saw her dog laying there, licking his lips. Dog, why didn't you bark and chase the girl? Well, you see, ma'am, said the dog, that little girl gave me a lovely bit of meat and bread to eat. You haven't given me anything as nice the whole time I've lived with you, even though I've served you. Gate! She ran up to the gate and swung it back and forth. Gate! Why didn't you screech to tell me that she was getting away? Well, Baba Yaga, said the gate as it swung silently back and forth, that little girl put a little bit of oil on my hinges, and it just so happens that I was becoming so squeaky I couldn't even stand myself. Well, now Baba Yaga was seeing red hot anger jumping up inside of her, and she leapt into her mortar, which you remember is a little bowl, and took up her pestle, which is a little club that used to stamp down herbs in the mortar, but this is a bigger mortar, and began to swing the pestle about so that the mortar flew up into the air and began to pursue the little girl, who's running so fast on her short feet that she was becoming quite tired, but she suddenly heard the clickety-clack of the pestle stirring the mortar so it would fly through the sky, and she took out the cloth from her pocket and threw it behind her and kept running, while the cloth swarmed across the ground. The cloth became wider. The cloth became longer. The cloth became a wide, rushing river. And Baba Yaga screeched her mortar to a stop. Clever girl, she said. She must have known I cannot cross the water. I would be dissolved in a moment. I have a plan. She flew her mortar back to her house and got out her whole herd of cattle and drove them towards the river, and the cattle drank and drank and drank and drank the water till it was dry, and Baba Yaga leapt back into her mortar and clickety-clacked it into motion, and the little girl who was running, who was nearly to the end of the woods, could hear it behind her and threw the comb over her shoulder and continued running, and as the comb landed, it immediately sprung up into the tightest forest of nettles that you have ever seen in your life, so close together and so tight that no matter where Baba Yaga tried, she couldn't get through. She couldn't make her way through. She gnawed at the branches. She tried to pull them apart, but they grew closer and closer, all tangled and gnarled together, and the girl ran out of the forest. And just as she ran, she stumbled upon a man. "Sorry, sir." "Little daughter!" It was her father. "Little daughter, what were you doing in those woods? Don't you know that the witch Baba Yaga lives there?" "Yes, father, I know." She explained the whole story about how her stepmother had sent her into the forest. "Your stepmother sent you there?" "Your stepmother sent you into that forest?" "Yes, father." That woman has something to answer for. And he picked up his little daughter and took her home. Well, when the evil stepmother saw that little girl clutched in her father's arms, she became so angry that she boiled up herself until she was nothing but a pile of sludge. Well, after the father swept the sludge away, he and his little daughter had the house to himself again. And he made sure that no one would ever harm his little daughter again. The end. I'm the Story Girl. Thank you for joining the story today. In the story, you may have noticed that the stepmother was an evil character. That is a very consistent theme in a lot of these stories. If you watch, you'll see that for the most part, the evil person is the stepmother. What I want you to do is I want you to look around in your life and decide who you think should really be the bad guy of the story. Is it the evil stepmother? Is it Baba Yaga? Or is it the father that was neglecting his little girl? All these stories have little nuances that we can explore. Thank you for exploring with me. If you enjoyed this story, go ahead, like and subscribe. so that you can join the story every single week. Thank you. Bye.